Amazing. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you, Sean, Eric, the team at Active Demand for putting together this webinar, and thank you all for attending. And so my objective for this first part of the webinar is to give you the highest level understanding of how to improve your agency's profitability. And then what we'll do is hand it back to the team at Active Demand to go through some practical examples of how to actually do this using process improvements, using technology, using automation. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my iPad screen here and take you through a couple of simple notes about how we improve agency profitability. So let me just go ahead and switch my screen share here to my iPad, and you should be able to see that there now. All right, so there's my iPad screen. Okay, so at the most fundamental level, an agency makes money in the following way. First, you collect what we call agency gross income, which is really a fancy way to say the money that is left over after you've paid any kind of pass-through expenses that you might have to pay to third-party vendors for client projects. So to give you an example, if we had a client that paid us $10,000 per month for a Facebook advertising campaign, and we spent $5,000 a month on Facebook ads, then that would actually be a $5,000 contract in terms of AGI. So the types of things that we pull out here when we pull out pass-through expenses would be things like advertising spend, print budgets, third-party vendors, white label partners, things of that nature. So when we subtract out pass-through, that's what we're talking about. So we collect our agency gross income. That's really the number that helps us determine what's going on in the business, how much money we have available to us, and that we need to earn essentially with the work that we do inside of business. And then what we want to evaluate is what does it actually cost us to get that work done? So we subtract out delivery costs. And so for most of us, delivery costs is going to be primarily payroll and usually some software expenses. So a good example of this would be if I was using Active Demand to set up campaigns for my clients and run a lot of the marketing automation that I set up on their behalf, then the licensing cost of that software every month or every year would be delivery expense or delivery cost, and usually the non-payroll side of this is a very nominal amount of money. It's 4 to 6% of your AGI. The majority of the rest of your delivery costs are going to be payroll. And then finally, you have the overhead of the business, which is all the costs associated with keeping a roof above your head or a working environment around your team should you be virtual, paying for lawyers, accountants, taxes, licenses, membership dues, all of the other things that you need to do to keep the business running and essentially operate the business. This would include things like sales and marketing as well. So generally speaking, your delivery costs, you're looking to keep those under 50% of AGI, and you're looking to keep your overhead under 30% of AGI, and what that should leave you with is 20% or more operating profit in the bank account at the end of the day. And so overhead is typically going to be somewhere in the range of, admin being 8 to 12%, sales and marketing being 8 to 12%, and facilities, if you have them, being somewhere in the 4 to 6% range. And of course, what's really important is that you're trying to keep overhead to under 30% of your agency gross income at any given time. And then the rest of your expenses are going to be focused on your delivery costs. So the long and short here is that we have so many clients that come to us and they are focused on trying to improve or reduce, I should say, their overhead as a way to impact their profitability. And the reality is there's just not that much juice for the squeeze often in overhead. Very few of the agency owners that we work with, their problem is that they are spending, $1,000 per employee on Aeron chairs, or that they're, dramatically overspending on overhead. Usually the problem is that they're not creating enough delivery margin. Their delivery cost relative to how much income they bring in is far too high. And often that is a result of them not charging enough money, spending too much time to get things done, or having too high of a cost for their team relative to the rates that they charge. And so ultimately what I want to focus on today is the 3 ways in which we can improve the relationship between the money that you collect from clients and what it costs you to earn that revenue, what it costs you to actually complete the thing that you promised to the client, and ultimately move forward with running the business and having a profit left over. So I'm going to skip over some of this stuff and I want to talk about the core formula for what we call delivery margin, which is the margin that you receive on every dollar that is collected from a client, you might think, hey, this sounds a lot like gross margin or contribution margin, and you would be correct. This is theoretically what your gross margin should be when you measure it as a agency, but unfortunately a lot of accountants disagree with us on this, so we created our own language so we could avoid the semantic discussions. But for all intents and purposes, you can think about this as being synonymous with gross margin or contribution margin. So the formula is the following: agency gross income minus delivery costs divided by agency gross income. Okay, so agency gross income is related to how much money do you bring in for a given time period or given section of work, and then delivery cost is related to what does it cost you to get that work done in terms of the time and payroll that goes into completing the deliverables that were promised to the client, as well as any shared delivery expenses such as software, tools, stock footage libraries, those kinds of things. And there are really three ways to influence this number, three levers that you can pay attention to, two of which impact AGI and increase the amount of money that you make for the delivery costs that you incur, and the other one related to decreasing delivery cost. And those three levers are the following. So the first one is average cost per hour, right? And that is red because it's related to your delivery cost. So of course, the first way to improve your delivery margin is to decrease your delivery cost. And the way we want to think about that is, what is the average cost per hour that we incur to get this work done? So for example, if you had an employee that gets paid $150,000 per year and they work, on average 2,000 hours per year, that's their employment contract, then they cost an average of $75 per hour. If you had an employee that costs half that much, $75,000 per year, then their average cost per hour would be half of that, so $37.50. And so the lower your average cost per hour, the lower your requirement for agency gross income is, because of course in aggregate that should roll up to a lower delivery cost. So that's the first strategy. It's simple but not easy. Get the same work done for cheaper with less expensive people. And of course this is simple but not easy, mostly because getting a lower cost resource to do the work tends to follow a lot of work that goes into establishing better process, establishing better systems, documenting things more clearly so that less judgment is required to complete a task. Less judgment typically means less experience, and less experience typically means that a person will be less expensive or that you can offshore that work, etc. And so we'll be talking and seeing some examples here of ways to use technology to streamline your process and remove judgment calls from the equation, and really allowing you to then offload a lot of the work that might be being done by a very senior, very experienced person to somebody that is much less experienced and still get the same outcome. So that's average cost per hour. The second is average billable rate, ABR. An average billable rate is defined as the efficiency, very simply the efficiency of revenue earning within a given time period or section of work. So to put this simply, for every dollar of average or of agency gross income that we collect, how many hours does it take us to earn that? So the formula for this is AGI divided by hours. And you can look at this for any time period. It could be a week, a month, a year, a quarter. And you can look at it for any section of work. Could be for a specific client, for a department, for a group of clients, for a certain project type. And ultimately what this will start to give you an understanding of is, on average, how much money do we earn for each hour that we spend doing this kind of work? And of course, the higher the average billable rate, the better. And so the relationship between these two numbers can be thought of as a proxy for delivery margin. You could run the same equation and say, what is my average billable rate minus my average cost per hour divided by my average billable rate, and that would give you a proxy for delivery margin. And so ultimately the game here for increasing average billable rate is very simple. You can either charge more money and spend the same amount of time to do something. And for most of us, that's an opportunity. We could stand to raise our prices, but there are limits to how much we can do that. And so the other side of the equation is, how do we do it faster? How do we spend less time doing this kind of work so that on average, we can earn more revenue for each hour that we put in without actually changing the price? And so we'll talk about some examples later on. We'll hear from Sean on how to accomplish that, again, leveraging technology. And then the last lever here is utilization, which asks the question of all the hours that I buy in bulk from my team every year, how many of those are spent actually earning us revenue, getting deliverables completed for clients that unlocks payment milestones and actually gets income moved from the balance sheet to the P&L that gets things done for clients so that we can actually keep the money that they've given us because we've delivered on the promises. And so the formula for that is very simple. We have the amount of capacity for a given set of the team for a given period of time, and then we look at how many hours were spent on client work in that time period. And of course, what we want to try and do is spend as much time as possible doing things that earn revenue for the business. And these are ultimately the three levers that control delivery margin. And so to just give you a very practical example, and then we'll come back to this and go into more detail on how this might look on a per project or on a per team level. If I had 10,000 hours of capacity to sell and I utilized that time at 50%, so 50% of the time that my team had was being spent doing client work, and then I sold that at an average of $100 per hour, then my agency gross income for that team would be $500,000, right? 500K. That's the maximum amount of revenue that we can earn with this team if we utilize them at 50% and earn an average of $100 per hour for every hour that we spend doing client work. If I took that same team and I bumped up utilization to 60% at the same average billable rate, then I would earn $600,000 with that same team. And of course, the payroll shouldn't change, the costs of running the business shouldn't change, so that should be $100,000 that goes straight to the bottom line. And then in the last example here, if we said it's 10,000 hours at 60%, and we up our average billable rate to $125 per hour, again, we don't have to charge more. Maybe we just find a way to spend a little bit less time getting the same thing done. Now all of a sudden that same team is earning, I think it's $750,000. I'll do some math on my phone here really quickly because I'm bad at math. Yep, $750,000. So now we've taken this team and presumably, again, we haven't changed their salary. We haven't changed the overhead cost of the business. And we've gone from earning $500,000 to $750,000 without changing the cost structure. That all goes to the bottom line. So for many of you running an agency, $250,000 could be the difference between being in the red and being in the black, and being moderately profitable or extremely profitable. So these simple levers have a big impact on your profitability. So what I'd love to do now is turn things back over to Sean and the team at Active Demand so they can kind of take us through ways in which we can optimize service delivery and actually decrease the amount of time that it takes us to do things. And then we can come back at the end and look at some examples of how that might impact things.
Okay, thanks for that. Definitely, if you haven't been, I think originally looking at the tracking your time, I think there's a good case to be doing that. You have to inspect what you expect, and also if you're trying to optimize the numbers, then yes, you definitely have to track is the reality. So what I'm going to do is a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit about getting profit through growth, which is scaling, and I'll talk about specifically the path to profit through the concepts of scaling, and then give you simple examples, and we'll pass it back to Marcel, who will run through some numbers. So we actually, as a company, we actually started as a marketing agency, and like most marketing agencies, it's fantastic work, and it's a case it's easy to grow, but I think that you might get to a spot where if you start adding clients, there's diminishing returns, right? The economies of scale isn't what you're getting. So really you have one choice, which is focus on margins. But if you also think about a second path, is what about profitable growth, right? So if I was to say to you today, I will give you, pick one of your clients, and I'll give you 4 more of those clients to start working with you today. Would you be able to handle it? Right? And what if I said to you, I will give you 20 more clients just like that? Would your business be able to handle that work? Right? And the answer, and if I say 100, the reality is that if you have a business that can scale, the answer is always, please give me more, right? Because then your growth will actually, your profit increases will come as a result of profitable growth. Right? But the reality is most agencies are not set up to scale, is the reality. right? It's easy to grow to a certain spot, but then you really sort of have to make the decision: are you going to right size and stay where you are and focus on margins, or are you going to fix the profitable growth problem? And a couple of things that are constraining most agencies for scalability. And this first one, it's a little bit, I had a bit of an argument with myself as whether I was going to present that, because a lot of agencies, it's even ourselves, it's about not the right money, it's about the right now money. And I argue it's taking on the wrong clients is something that has a big impact on scalability. Another one clearly that has an impact on scalability is churn. And finally, it's a case that not delivering what clients are buying, there's this disconnect what they're coming to you for, and you're producing something else. I think it's going to constrain your profitable growth. And the reality is, it's back to what Marcel was talking about, is it's not about decreasing wages or whatever. It's about actually doing high value work. And the value is not typically in some of the labor that we actually, tasks that we do. The value is in creative. So wrong clients, I think we've all had them. And I think that just some attributes of the wrong client would be low margin, low volume companies. So companies that are on razor thin margins and they don't do a lot of business with clients, don't have a lot of clients. You're going to come in, they're going to be not going to have budget to spend, they're going to be looking at every single penny, and it's going to be difficult to produce results, is the reality. And another one is maybe they have a low top line revenue, right? And because if you come in and let's say their business is worth X per year, and you go and you improve it by 10%, it's still, how are you going to see significant growth for your business, right? And another one, this is burnt us lots of times when we were an agency, is picking a client that we are not subject matter expert on their business. And why is that difficult? Why does that hurt? Is because the reality is it's going to take you a very long time to truly understand the pain that their customers are having that your client does very well at, right? And that's when you truly get to be creative, is if you understand the vertical that your client's business is in. And finally, it's abusive, right? Abusive clients. We've had, everybody's had a client that is very difficult, not demanding, but I'm sure you've had them, whereas it's an abusive client where they're abusing your staff, etc. And really the cost of keeping these, the impact of scalable growth and the cost to your business is you're putting a ton of effort into learning about a vertical or a business that will allow you to get more companies just like that one. Right, so the longer you keep these around, the harder it is for you to get out of that unprofitable situation. And you end up, because you're taking all this time with the wrong clients, you end up losing the right clients. And worse case scenarios, you actually lose staff because they don't like what they're working with a client that is a bad client, so to speak. So reality is you're climbing the wrong mountain, and of course, scalable, profitable growth is not possible. Another one, clearly an impact, is churn. So if you have a retainer relationship with your clients, then definitely every client you have is producing for you, and you can go to the bank with the revenue you're getting from these clients. But losing clients, definitely your churn has a direct impact on your scalability. And there's lots of reasons, and I can do a whole presentation on churn for an agency, and definitely change in leadership on the client side. You lose your champion. Maybe you're not actually moving the needle for the client because you're not an expert in their vertical. You can't demonstrate or prove the results that you're giving your clients, right? And poor performance, there's some other competitor agency comes in and steals the business. There's lots of reasons here for churn, and really the underlying, the root cause of the churn is always lack of trust, or it's a case that your agency has operational issues, and the real big one is that there's a perceived lack of value for the money that they're giving you. And I argue the quickest and easiest way to reduce churn is, and it's a little bit brash, but shove the value in their face. Make sure that you are communicating and branding the results you are producing, right? And putting it in a format that they can consume and understand. Dumping stats, that is absolutely a mistake. It's about showing explicitly this company, this client, this prospect came from this marketing effort, and demonstrate this as close to the time when they're realizing the value. So it's really push the value. Think as an agency, that as marketers, that it's really about presenting the value continuously to your clients. Now, this next piece is really going to look at optimizing your business, and it's aligned with what Marcel was talking about, and really relating to building a framework for profitable growth or scaling your agency. So I'm going to step back a little bit here, and I think it's important to ask the question, what business are you in? Right? And these are questions I ask every year when I'm doing my planning. What business am I in? What business should I be in? Right? Who's my customer? Who should my customer be? Who is my competitor? Who should my competitor be? Right? Or if you're at if somebody says to you, what is it that you sell? An easy way to look at this is, what are your KPIs? What is it that you're measuring? That'll tell you exactly what business you're in. And some great KPIs that Marcel has presented that you should be measuring: utilization, billable rates. There was a calculation we used to do, which was called factor, which was revenue per employee, right? And we were targeting about a 2.5 factor is the reality. But end of the day, it's back to this describing what your KPIs are in the context of defining what business you're in. Now, the next question is, you know what business you're in, what is it that you are selling, right? It's a case that what you go to your website, if I go to your website right now and take a look, what would I understand is it that you guys, that your company does, right? That's what you're selling. Now, is it time? Is it labor, right? Is it services, right? And these are not really rhetorical questions, but the next slide is really, I think, the important one is, if you're thinking about what it is that you're doing. Now, let's turn it around. What are the clients purchasing, right? So why is it different? Why am I saying this? Is that one is what you're presenting on in your menu as what you're offering. Now think about, what are clients really buying from your agency? I argue the only thing anybody ever goes to an agency for is to buy results, right? To unlock some business potential that is currently hidden from the business owner, right? So it's a case that if you are selling anything but results, right? I argue you might be in the wrong business, right? And why I'm saying this is that it's really, it's important to flip it around to think about, and you do this every day with your clients, coming up with creative solutions to position what your clients are selling and putting them in context of solving real problems for their clients. But let's, look at your business. Is that if you're selling time, if you're selling labor, if you're selling services, you might want to think about the concept of changing your business model to selling results, right? Now, it seems simple, but it actually, there's a little bit of complexity to this. So really what I'm trying to say here is, get out of the labor business, because the reality is people are not coming to you to buy labor. They're coming to you to help them grow their business, right? So something you might want to consider, and this is really the path to profit from a scaling perspective, is transforming your thinking from project management to product management, right? Understanding that you as an agency have fantastic products, right? It's a case that, and the product is not project management, the product is packaged results. Every agency, and it doesn't matter what your business model is, you with certainty do have a playbook. Typically, you're not going to a client and doing something that you've never done before and admitting it to the client if you are doing it. But if you take on a new client, you've never done it before, you're hiding from the fact, but you're still gonna lean into your playbook of things that work. Right? So we all have playbooks, and I argue a lot of the playbooks are, in tribal knowledge. This type of a playbook is being those stories that or stories that work, and they work, and will produce results. So from a playbook perspective, I'm going to talk about codifying, cataloging, and monetizing the playbook. So number one is codifying. It's that if your results, if you don't know where the playbook is, look at those customers you've done fabulous, you've produced tons for them, and go talk to the people who are actually doing it and seeing what they're doing, right? And find a way to codify what it is, the process or the marketing initiative, the marketing campaign, or the thinking. Right? And there's some fantastic funnel tools out there. If you've never used one before, I think it's a time to go look at one, but really it's about diagramming or codifying this process in a way that you understand and you can communicate and show your clients, your new clients, the product that you're selling. So another one is cataloging these. So in other words, it isn't just having them show up in the back room of a library or in a book or something like that. It's really about turning each of these into stories in your playbook into individual products that can be sold to your clients, right? And there's lots of clients working with us today that are doing exactly this, and they're codifying and cataloging their playbook. And then the next piece is monetizing. And what a lot of agencies that are working with us are doing is they'll literally codify, catalog, and then present the different options to the clients and sell them as a subscription. So instead of saying, yes, I can take this budget and spend it on Facebook, it's this initiative. This is the name of the initiative. It costs this much per month to execute. So it's well-defined, and once you productize productize your playbook, it makes it a lot easier to sell it, instead of just coming into a client and a new prospect and just saying, yeah, what do you want to do? Yeah, we can do whatever it takes to make you win. No, it's actually having a very well-defined playbook with pricing associated with each of the plays, so to speak. So really the path to profitability is that, back to what Marcel was saying, your biggest cost is labor, right? And hence it makes sense to think about billable rates and to sell labor. But the reality is, if we turn it around and we're thinking about productizing what it is you do well, then the quickest way to profitability is to automate everything possible that you can, right? So if it's a case that if you look at what you're doing and there's labor involved, what is the value, the value labor in that story? Setting up a WordPress site, no value in that. Anybody can do that. You can go, you can go on to any of these labor sites and find 1,000 people that'll build a WordPress. That's not the value, right? So it's a case that look at all the labor you're doing and look at how much of that labor is actually high value labor, and transform the role of your people from administrivia and task-driven work to creative, strategic, and building that playbook. And very important in this story is reducing the effort to deliver that playbook through automation. So definitely a way to do this is through technology. And if you have a disparate set of tools, it makes it very difficult for you to, one, shove the value in the client's face because you don't know where that value is. And bouncing around between tools is definitely a way to limit your scalability. So a little bit about our tech, and we'll give an example of how the tech is used to automate and reduce the labor required to deliver results. So active demand, integrated marketing platform. And really, it's the case that it starts with the buyer journey. We track everything that prospects do. And then with that, we have a set of tools on top of it to help accelerate the buyer journeys. So we have full social engagement stack, email marketing stack, landing pages, call tracking, and definitely automation is the big piece of it. And a very important part of it is that it is a multi-tenant marketing stack. So what that means is you can use this as infrastructure to optimize your labor processes. And so yeah, long story short, stop juggling, start scaling, and I'll just go through an example. And the example I'm going to show, first example I'm going to show you is the webinar that we've done, that we're doing here today. So in this webinar, when we think about promoting a webinar or getting people into a webinar, there's really a couple of phases. First phase is promotion, right? Promotion is where we want to try to get an audience of people into this webinar. So on the promotion side, this is a funnel view, an example of a visualization of webinars. We are an agency, we used to do lots of webinars for clients, right? So this is definitely was definitely inside our playbook. So we codify it with a visual tool like this, and it shows we're going to do multi-channel marketing to drive people to a landing page. The landing page, once they register, will go to a confirmation page. And definitely for us, and I think all of you, if you're thinking about driving results, the more you can do in session, and the further you can take somebody in session, the better, right? So for us, we want people to sign up for a trial. So we could go, after they register, go do a bunch of emailing to try to get them to sign up for a trial. But the reality is, it's much better to do it in session. So you've seen it right on our confirmation page. There's an offer to, if you don't have an account with us, to go sign up for a trial. And then once you sign up for a trial, of course, we want you to book a demo. So you see this whole story it is a very nice playbook, story in our playbook to drive people to, and again, there's a calendar right on the confirmation page to try to book book a demo once you've signed up for a trial. So this is an example of a codified story. Now, once we have the person who's who's registered, we want them to attend, right? So there's automation here that once they register, and you went through this yourself, it's the case that you get all of this automation, 24-hour reminders, all this stuff to tell you that you have to attend this webinar. And then once you attend, we want you to, fill out a survey. And then we're going to send links to everybody with the recording on it. So on the promotion side, there's a calendar campaign with our social content and our emails that are scheduled and delivered, and we drive people towards a bunch of landing pages, right? So we have the landing page for registration, which you all saw, and then there's a landing page for the survey, a landing page for the webcast at the end, which will have slide decks, and of course the landing pages for the confirmation pages. So it seems like there's a ton of work to do for a webinar, right? And there is. That's why we charge so much for webinars when we are an agency. But if you're just thinking about labor, what's different between one webinar and the next? Date and time, a couple of mug shots, and the positioning. So we tokenize the entire webinar, including the mug shots, into this table. So this is part of the codified recipe. And when we go to market this webinar, or promote the webinar, literally it takes us 5 minutes, right? Because we deploy the recipe, fill out the table of values, put in the mug shots, done. All the landing pages are built, all the emails are built, all the social posts are built, even the funnel view is built. So it's a case that if I was to sell a marketing initiative out of my playbook to my client, I would show them this funnel as an example, and then I would say, okay, to do a webinar per month, this is how much it's going to cost per month, right? And the work required for me, if they're the ones doing the content, we just do the promotion. So the labor required to do it is minimal. And the view that they use to monitor what they bought on their dashboard is the exact same view that you presented it to them with the funnel view, right? So it's showing them exactly, they can go in at any time on your dashboard, a branded dashboard, to see exactly how many people have signed up and exactly who, not just the stats, because we're tracking everything. And then it's a case that you can literally embed this cataloged item inside your on your website, right? So this is a view on our website that is a live view of one of the catalog recipes that we've built. So it makes it, again, the benefit is that you've take what you have in tribal knowledge, codify it, catalog it, and then, very importantly, important on this story is to monetize. So Active Demand is a platform that allows you to build out account templates and onboard clients rapidly. And we've actually, I'm going to pass things back over to Marcel to go over some stats in the example with, and I'll just very quickly, I'll show you before I hand things over, is the platform, landing page builder, the campaign builder, like I just showed you, the funnel builder, the sequence builder, and very important is the concept of an account template. So when we were an agency, we focused on two verticals. One was industrial automation, a lot of webinars and trade shows, which were, again, packaged recipes. And the other vertical we focused on was, interestingly enough, was fitness studios, specifically martial arts studios. So we would bake in recipes for our webinars and, of course, full account templates for the low margin, high volume clients. Here. So if I go add a new client, I would just choose that martial arts template and boom, everything would be built, including a full microsite, and the labor required to bring that client on would be very small. So I'm just going to pass things back over to Marcel, and he'll go through the accounting side of leveraging automation for building for scaling your operations.
Thank you, Sean, for going through some very practical examples here. So of course, a lot of these examples are very specific to Active Demand, and clearly some very powerful things that can be done to dramatically streamline, like working on this webinar, it was amazing to me, the process behind this, just how templatized it really was and how little time and effort was required to get a very elaborate thing going. And then, of course, for me as a partner in this, being able to see the entire funnel and the journey, really, really cool stuff. But the principles here are agnostic. So as you start to think about how to implement these ideas, understand that this could be associated to any number of processes or tools. And what I want to share is the financial impact that this can have either on a project or for your entire agency. And so let's see here. Okay. This is a spreadsheet that I put together, and I'm going to be sharing it, and we'll try to send it out after the webinar, that helps you kind of calculate the difference between a current process that you might be running and a new process that you might be able to design by leveraging more automation, more technology to streamline the delivery of that service. And so there are kind of three main drivers here. Well, really two main drivers. The first is the amount of time that it takes for you to do something, and then the cost of that time. And in aggregate, that's going to determine your delivery cost. And based on your delivery cost, there's a number of things that we're going to look at. So this is an example that the team at Active Demand was able to put together before the webinar today in speaking to one of their clients and getting a real practical example of setting up, in this case, an advertising campaign and review campaign for a client. And so they have a microsite that they're deploying, which includes, a small website, some landing pages, etc. They have a drip campaign and a review campaign essentially that gets deployed to collect more reviews for this business. They have a paid ads campaign that's being deployed, and then a monthly reporting cadence. So here you can see, estimated time for each of these deliverables: the microsite at 62 hours, the review campaign at 5 hours, the paid ads campaign at 21, and the monthly reporting at roughly 2 hours. And then you have the associated cost for all the people that are involved in this process, and in total, the delivery cost for each of these deliverables. So this is what the agency has to outlay in terms of time, in terms of salary. This is not factoring in any shared delivery costs to get this done for a client. And then here we have an example of what that looks like, assuming that you've created a repeatable recipe inside of Active Demand that can be resold essentially to clients with very minimal labor to reproduce, just like you saw in the example of this webinar. And you can see a dramatic decrease in the cost to deliver. Another important thing to note is the time to value, which, if you're familiar with the $100 million offers framework from Alex Hormozy, which I think is a really great framework for thinking about offers, is a massive factor in terms of how valuable something is perceived to be by the client. If you can get them something that is actionable within a day as opposed to 2 weeks, that is a pretty significant increase in the value to the client in a world where you're selling results or you're framing these things as productized services. So the first thing, and this is particularly relevant to those of you that are identifying here as the people still leading sales within the organization, which I think everybody answered yes to that thing in the poll, is what do you need to charge for this to start making sense for you as an agency? And generally speaking, we want to charge enough money to have a 70% delivery margin on a client project. If we're not setting ourselves up for a 70% delivery margin, then it's very, very difficult for us to be profitable as an agency, even if we're hitting our utilization targets. And so in this case, if it's costing us almost $2,700 to get this work done for a client, we have to start the pricing conversation in the $8,000 to $9,000 range. Whereas in the second scenario, at $1,000, we can still be very profitable on this project. We can still be hitting our 70% margin target. And obviously, there's a lot of room in between those two things. So if you're in a place where you feel like you're losing a lot of deals or you're getting priced out of your market and you're losing deals to lower price competition, you can actually use this to move things in the opposite direction and improve or maintain your margins while actually charging less money to the client. But assuming that that's not what you want to do, you want to maintain your price point at a certain level, then the second thing here that I've put together will help you get an understanding of what is the margin difference between these two scenarios at a given price. So in this example, we're going to say, okay, we're charging $8,000 for this set of deliverables. In the first scenario here, you can see that our margin is going to be 66.89%. That's pretty good. Our average bill rate will be $89 on this particular service offering. And in this scenario, at $8,000, our margin is just insane, 96%, average billable rate of $784. So, of course, this is, what's interesting is, in talking to Sean before this, this is actually somewhat of a conservative estimate, because this is assuming an amortization of the cost of setting up the system across several clients. But even if we tripled the amount of time that it was going to take to do this thing, so I went in here and multiplied by 3, you'd still be talking about a pretty substantial increase in average billable rate. We're going here from 89 to 261, and even if we tripled the delivery cost, we're still talking about an 88% margin. So this is a substantial improvement in profitability, again, all coming from essentially decreasing the amount of time that it takes to do this work. And then if we want to look at, well, what does that impact globally on the business? So assuming that we can maintain our utilization rates, how does this increase in average billable rate improve the business? In a world where we're maintaining all of our staff and we're now just selling more work at this kind of margin. Of course, the team can handle a lot more work if it's taking them a tenth of the time to do it. And so in this case, we have scenario one where we're going to assume we're spending $600,000 on payroll costs to get 10,000 hours of delivery capacity. This is roughly 10 full-time employees worth of delivery capacity. We have an average billable rate of $89 in this case. So we should be able to do $888,000 in agency gross income at $89 and at $89, which means a delivery profit of 32.5%, not very good. And we're probably just breaking even, just above breaking even if we spend, in this case, 30% of our agency gross income on overhead. So about 250 grand. In the second scenario, I've gone and increased our payroll cost to 700K. So I'm assuming we're giving everybody a raise. We're spending more money on better quality people. We've also increased our overhead cost to $400,000 because why not? And we're still getting a delivery profit of over 70%. We're getting an operating profit of almost 60%. I mean, these results are almost unheard of. But you can see here, this is drawing an extreme contrast, but at an average billable rate of $261 an hour, which, by the way, we have many clients that are averaging billable rates that are at this level or higher. So this is possible. It might seem insane, but it is possible. Again, when you sell a product and not labor, and you start to arbitrage the efficiency of how you deliver that thing, this is the kind of stuff that becomes possible. So you can see here, this has a dramatic impact on the business. And there's two ways that you can get to this kind of operating profit percentage. In this scenario, we're assuming you're just selling a lot more work with the same team because it's taking you so much less time to do it. But the other side of this is, well, you don't need as many people on your team. You can decrease the overhead, you can decrease the payroll of your team, and essentially be maintaining the current revenue that you have, but doing it with a lot less expense. So this is the power of focusing on efficiency. And, you know, of course, assuming that all the other things that Sean talked about, improving retention, being able to convert more customers, all of those things obviously are going to lead to better profitability. But when we get into the nuts and bolts of what is the quality of that revenue, this is really where all things being equal in terms of sales, in terms of revenue, in terms of utilization, you really start to create a massive separation and you start to really dramatically increase the bottom line. So what I would love to do is post a link to this spreadsheet. It's going to be a view only link in the chat, and we'll have this sent out after the webinar as well. And what you'll be able to do is, this will be view only, but you'll be able to come in here and go to file, make a copy of this calculator for yourself, and you can use it to calculate your own scenarios and really figure out how to create scenarios and improve your own profitability and model out, you know, what would it mean if we automated this, or we templatized this, or we took the time it takes us to do this thing and decreased it by a substantial amount. So I'm going to go ahead and open the chat and drop this in here. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sean and the team at Active Demand. And I want to thank everybody for being here. Oh, I guess one last thing that I can give you as well is the Agency Profit Toolkit. So we just scratched the surface of what it means to measure the profitability of your agency. If you want to go much deeper into the metrics, how to calculate them, how to think about them, you want to get free tools and spreadsheets to help you measure these things on your own, you can head to parakeeto.com/toolkit and get access to some free resources that we've put together for you there as well. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sean and the team at Active Demand. And thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for that deep dive into the numbers. Definitely, as you'll see with that spreadsheet, there was I think there's tab 2, which shows you that the assumption was that this is deploying the recipe with 20 clients, and the numbers, of course, all they get much better if you're able to take the recipes and deploy them to many more clients. So, yeah, with that, I'll pass things back to Eric.